This is all I've ever known. Is that even
Possible for me?
I don't want to miss anything.
I don't need that.
I don't want to acknowledge my pain.
Fine.
I don't want to get poked with needles.
I don't want that.
There's nothing wrong.
I'm fine.
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 Did you know that 9 out of 10 people with hemophilia aspire to be active or very active? Did you know that 2 out of 3 people with hemophilia cannot participate in activities that they would like to? And did you know that 3 out of 4 people with hemophilia modify activities based on their fear of bleeds, pain, and joint damage? This round of Did You Know in Hemophilia was brought to you by HemActive. HemActive, a study you should know about. But for real though, those are some pretty heavy-hitting data points from the HemActive study. 9 out of 10 people with hemophilia aspire to be active or very active, but 2/3 cannot participate in activities that they want to, and 3/4 adjust based on fear. Mark Skinner, a friend and fellow person with hemophilia, is the first person who really got me thinking about how chronic resilience and entrenched thinking could be quite insidious. In fact, much of the language that I use to describe the I'm fine mindset originally comes from Mark. Mark joins me today to provide some top-notch insights as it relates to hemophilia, mindset, and possibilities. Mark, thanks for joining me today. If you could set the stage for us, what does the standard of care in hemophilia look like today as opposed to when you were born? And where exactly does mindset and resilience come into play?
Well, when I was born, treatment didn't exist. It hadn't been discovered. But treatment has evolved from treating the disease now for the opportunity to treat the individual. Personalized treatment is the standard of care today. And what this data tells us is that individual goals and aspirations don't necessarily align with what's actually happening within the clinical setting or in our daily living, that we have aspirations and goals that go beyond. I think the data also has told us that we're a resilient community. While it's great to be resilient, we really shouldn't have to fit our lives into our hemophilia, but it would really be better to live our lives and figure out how we need to manage our hemophilia so we can achieve the richest possible life. So I guess in short, the way I like to say it is, it's not really a matter of just being alive, but the goal really should be to live life.
It's well known that hemophilia leads to joint and muscle bleeds, joint deterioration, pain. The osteopathic implications of hemophilia are pretty well understood, but what has your work uncovered about the true psychological burden of hemophilia on patients and families?
We've learned a lot about the psychosocial burden on individuals living with hemophilia and on families and caregivers, but we haven't really understood all of the elements that go behind that. So what the HemActive study actually wanted to do was to dig under the hood and see if we could tease out what is actually making a difference. And what came through to us is the reason that individuals are making these compromises is fear and anxiety. It is the fear of a bleed. It is the fear of pain. It is the fear of long-term joint damage that causes people to make compromises and the anxiety associated with that. And so what we were hoping is that through this study that we would gain knowledge. So with the knowledge then, individuals would be empowered to speak freely with their healthcare professionals about what's important to them, what matters to them, and through having this open dialogue and perhaps goal sharing, that we could personalize the treatment to overcome those barriers so that the fear and anxiety is actually recognized and it's managed, and then that there's alignment on how to accommodate it.
Fear and anxiety, you note, are real drivers of behavior modification for people with hemophilia, even more so than previously experienced bleeding. In other words, the fear of a bleed is more powerful than the experience of a bleed when we're thinking about behavior modification. What do you make of that piece of data?
Typically, we have looked at health outcomes for individuals with hemophilia, or historically, how many times have you had a bleed? How many joints did you have that are involved? And those are clinical metrics. Those are things that are measured in the clinic room. Those aren't the things that make me an individual. I'm a whole person, that I have a life. I want to go to school. I want to have a family. I want to get a job. I want to go on vacations and do things that are of interest to me. And when you're afraid or you have limitations or you have anxiety about those, you make compromises. You may not be able to participate in the sports and activities. You may have to do them alone and not participate in sort of team activities. You may not go on the kind of summer vacation that you want because you can't go hiking. You choose a more sedentary vacation. You pick a career that's at a desk versus an active vacation. All of these little kinds of compromises that we accept as normal are somewhat insidious. And it is because that we have this learned behavior from the time that we are born that we need to make adjustments, we need to plan, and if not, we risk significant joint damage and disability and perhaps an early retirement because of health restrictions. So it's that fear that is sort of ingrained in us that I think is important to tease out because we now have the tools to actually manage hemophilia far differently than we did previously.
To your point, Mark, we have the tools to manage hemophilia far different than before, but we also still have hemophilia. I don't want to get stuck in an I'm fine mindset, accepting suboptimal outcomes. I don't want to get stuck in a pattern of habituated thinking, but I also want to be appropriately cautious and conscientious of the fact that I do have hemophilia. So I guess from one blood brother to another, where's the line between responsible self-care and fear-based, life-limiting decision-making?
One of the questions that I love to debate with blood brothers, as you say, is, am I who I am today because of or in spite of my hemophilia? Has hemophilia made me stronger, given me opportunities? Has it taken me in directions that never would have been possible or perhaps in my wheelhouse of interest early on in life? And I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to that, but I think part of the answer lies in, I really don't know, and maybe there's no such thing, but I don't know what a normal life is. Really, from the time I was born, my parents adapted, what was normal and acceptable for me, and I just accepted it throughout. There have been aha moments for me as I moved along. Unlike you, the back of my baseball card's pretty full. I've now had over a dozen orthopedic surgeries and a host of the other complications that came with living with hemophilia, and that won't be the case for people that are born today. But I clearly made career decisions. I had a strong interest in going into the Foreign Service and working globally, and only later in life, through my work with the World Federation of Hemophilia, was I able to fulfill that sort of longing and desire because I couldn't accept an international appointment because my health wouldn't allow it. So I was sort of destined to, a career civil service job at a desk, sitting, at home here in the U.S. And if I really wanted to pursue that, I needed to. But I learned to adapt. We're remarkable. I had strong parents, as I expect you did, that sort of helped channel us. They identified our interests. And I don't really have regrets looking back on childhood. But as you sort of pick it apart, you know that there are those conscious decisions that you've made. And it doesn't have to be that way. We can really begin to think about what really was previously unimaginable.
Mark, thank you for your time and insights. You've shared a tremendous amount. Before we go, any parting thoughts for the audience?
We have the right to be heard. We're in an era when patient-centered care matters and the patients really should be at the center of all decisions. So don't shy away from the courage of your convictions. What matters to you as an individual should matter to your healthcare professionals and ultimately should be reflected in the decisions that are made and the treatments that you choose. It will be a different era as we move forward, and what you've known in the past should not limit what you can imagine for your future. Treatment will be tailored, treatment will be personalized, and that's ultimately what we want, is for our treatment to allow us to be the individual that we want to be. So I can't imagine a more exciting time.
Hemophilia severity is determined by factor activity levels, a measurement of how much factor you have in your blood at time of diagnosis. The more factor you have in your body over time, the better your bleed protection is, which is why many people with hemophilia choose to treat prophylactically. Your doctor can perform measurements to evaluate the factor activity levels in your blood. Learn more about the importance of factor activity levels by talking to your doctor and visiting levelsmatter.com. Sanofi aims to raise the bar for patients living with hemophilia. Reimagine what's possible by visiting rareblood.disorders.com to hear more about Sanofi's dedication to the bleeding disorders community. Being in a position to, as Mark put it, think about what really was previously unimaginable is exciting. It's also scary. Pushing into the unknown, even a good unknown, can be scary. It can be easier in the short term to retreat to an I'm fine mindset, to dismiss the discovered possibilities as not for me. And when we do that, we limit ourselves. We limit our lives. Thanks to the work of Mark and his colleagues on studies like HemActive, we now have more and more data to support the importance of treating the whole person, including that person's mental health. We have more and more data to substantiate the true psychological burden of hemophilia, along with indications as to what drives that burden. With this data comes the opportunity for more nuanced and personalized shared decision-making conversations with providers, which ultimately leads to more opportunity and better quality of life for the patient. For more on the HemActive study and Mark's work, take a look at the links in the program notes. And for more mental health resources, visit mentalhealthmatters2.com. Thank you to Mark Skinner for joining me today, and thank you to Sanofi for supporting this segment. Subscribe to BloodStream Podcast wherever you listen, and we'll be back with another installment of I'm Fine next time.